erratic madness of the road didn't seem to cause concern. Kids sat at the edge of it, older people meandered across it, cows clustered serenely in the middle of it. Even as we whizzed by and stirred up dust and pebbles, both the human beings and animals went about their business undisturbed. And then there was a visual punchline, adding a bawdy, comic-like touch to the landscape. Houses were adorned with giant, brightly colored paintings, sometimes of a rooster or lotus flower, or occasionally a 10-foot giant winged phallus wrapped sweetly in a bow. When I'd found pictures of these online, they'd appeared humorous. Here, they seemed ordinary, just part of the scenery. As we drove, Nawang Pan was like a wind-up doll, chattering from the middle row of the van. She narrated the sights. Animals lived on the ground level of a house, she said, and the people one flight above. You could tell we were in Paro and not Thimphu because the houses had 3 rows of windows, not 2. From the license plates, you could distinguish whether a vehicle belonged to the government, was a taxi, or was a private car. She had earned a tour guide license, she explained, so if I had any questions, she was equipped to answer them. I had one. What exactly is the meaning of the giant penises? There had been various discussions on the web about their meaning. They weren't fertility symbols, nor were they indicators that prostitutes were available inside, as was the case in other countries. It had something to do with a bawdy mystic named Drikpa Kinley, also known as the Divine Madman, who tamed demons, just about everyone else he came into contact with, using his abundant sexual powers. But the reason for their prominence on the sides of houses hadn't been properly explained on the internet. Nawang deciphered the mystery. We believe it is wrong to envy what someone else has. When you have a phallus painted on the side of the house, people will be too ashamed to look and to covet what they don't have, she said. In this way, the phalluses ward off evil spirits. This had to be the most beautiful, circuitous logic I've ever heard. I imagine a lot of visitors ask that question, huh? Yes, Nawang said, giggling, lingering on the S for emphasis. They think it's strange. For us, it's just a part of Bhutan. And that's a risque passage to read in polite company, but it's also what life is like there. And it's a Buddhist kingdom, and it's a very modest group of people. The national dress, that you've never exposed this much leg, and certainly, well, they wear high heels all the time, but it's a very modest society, so it's a very deeply religious, spiritual group of people. So the idea that there are these giant, beautiful paintings is a little strange. And they manifest themselves in other ways around their wooden ones, side houses. You have a scarecrow. It's very interesting. But that's a perfect stranger in a strange land story. It's a very interesting place, and that unleashed a series of cultural experiences that we all have. People come to New York, where I'm from, and it's kind of mind-blowing, or Los Angeles, where I live now, but there was something about being in a place that was so devoid of building and so just a wide open space, and yet was steeped in cultural tradition that just sort of flipped a switch in my brain for me. And whereas, you go on vacation sometimes and it recalibrates you, it's like plugging in and feeling a little bit better about home. There was an endless series of experiences like that in the 6 weeks that I went, the first time I went to Bhutan, that made me want to go back. And I did in fact go back. I didn't go there intending to write a book, but there was just something magnificent about seeing, for me, as somebody really burnt out on the whole idea of media, to see that media were welcomed so fervently in this place. They didn't have a sort of cynical attitude about information news. I'm looking for another passage I want to read for you really quick, and then I'll open up for questions. This radio station was the first of its kind, and so because there was a sort of evolving media culture there, you had what we had many years ago, where there were just 3 television stations, and where you might go to work the next day or school, and people had a shared frame of reference. I don't know, some of us are old enough to remember that Wizard of Oz was on every, when was it, Thanksgiving Eve or Easter? It still is, right, but nobody watches it now, because everybody's got 100 channels.
It's also on like 50 other times.
Right, exactly. And the average kid can sit and watch it 100 times on a DVD and memorize every scene. that was a wonderful and interesting time in history, and that's where Bhutan is now. All of the folks there heard this radio station that was just starting up, and at the time all there was locally produced was this government-owned television station, which was nice but a little boring. For some of us it would be okay, but it was a lot of news. Now there's a lot of rip-offs of American Idol, but that's a whole other story. But the radio landscape was literally just one other station, and that was really soporific stuff. I mean, it was just a couple of news bulletins and a little bit of local music, but that was it. So the idea of having, you know, a bunch of 20-something-year-olds have access to a microphone and be able to start playing illegally downloaded music from the internet was a pretty cool thing for them, and everybody was listening. Everybody listened.